Thank you, Brendan. Good morning, everybody. It was a 150 word bio, by the way, and um, I thought it was kind of a fun way to introduce it. But what was really important, I think, in this bio was the last sentence. The fact that for the past 15 or so years, I've been trying to move the design agenda, as we call it, and we won't be talking about design thinking. I totally agree with you, Dan, within a company. And I'll explain to you in a minute a little bit what I mean by that. So, just like you, Dan, I'm a bit jet-lagged. I arrived here last night. I'm sorry I missed the celebration last night. It's not my first trip to Australia. I love being here. It's always great, and I really find that this format is absolutely wonderful. I'm looking forward to great exchanges over the next few days. So, can I use this? We will have to be fast. I think 20 minutes in order to really give justice to the topic that Brendan and Maureen offered for us to focus on and talk about today is very short. Dan and I must be about the same age. I feel I'm a product designer as well. Like many product designers, we're very passionate. It's hard to keep well, it's hard to keep this passion away from us, and so it will probably transpire a little bit in my talk. I did quite a bit of work outside of corporations in the first 10 or so years of my career. I worked for Smart Design. I'll talk at the end of this little 20 minutes about the work that I did in Africa for an NGO which I set up, which is called Design Corporation. And then in 2000, I joined the corporate world, first for a big faucet or tap manufacturer in the US, and then moved back to France, where I've been since 2003, first working for Legrand. Legrand is a world leader in electrical systems and home automation systems. You may know the company HPM here in Australia. That's part of the Legrand group. And now I've been at Orange. So what is Orange? A bit like Telstra, I guess, a bit like Vodafone, a little bit more than that, actually, a bit more like Docomo in Japan. We're a big company, and that's what my job is today, trying to move the design agenda within a big company. I'll let you read the numbers. We've got 226 million, actually. I think we're closer to 230 million customers today in many parts of the world. In France, of course, but we are actually active and selling solutions to consumers in over 30 countries, and a lot of them in Africa. So we're mainly a European and African company. I run a design team which is established at something that we call the IMT, not MIT, but Innovation, Marketing, and Technology. Overall, it's almost 9,000 people who develop solutions. And the reason I was saying that we're a little bit different from what Vodafone or Telstra might be is that this company, Orange, which is the evolution of the old public sector telecommunication company in France, is still very much rooted in doing a lot of research. We have a ton of researchers who produce a lot of insights, and my job as design and embedded into the marketing and innovation part of the company is to make sense out of that and try to develop solutions and experiences that make sense for the users. We're a team of 50 people. We're based in London, Paris. We're actually based in the right order in Paris, London, Amman, and Abidjan. Why Amman and Abidjan? Because we have innovation centers there, and we develop solutions very close to our end users. We've got research labs in Beijing, in Tokyo, in Cairo, in Warsaw, in Madrid, in Paris, in London. We've got a presence in San Francisco as well. We used to have one at the MIT in Boston near the MIT. What is really important, I think, in a design team is that we interact with people who are not necessarily designers. And so, yes, I think we've got an expertise, we've got a toolbox that we use, and I think one of the great skills of a designer is to render things visible and render them understandable. But I work with linguists, with semioticians, sociologists. I've got a few engineers working in my team as well. And I think it also creates a great lot of value, complexity sometimes, but value. So I'll whip through these very quickly. Of course, we design products, we design interactions. A lot of what we do is rooted in first observing what the users need. I think some of these pictures are relatively self-explanatory. In this one, you look at the remote controls that we typically buy, you know, for a set-top box that we buy off the shelf from a manufacturer. It might be Philips, might be somebody else. A lot of these remotes still have a lot of buttons that don't make much sense because we don't use them. If you actually do observe what people do in their homes, you realize that a lot of VOD controls are not used. You could push them onto the screen, and you could make much simpler remotes. And you can make remotes that actually make sense, that you can use, that are ergonomically sound, and all that. And this is what it is. Also, when we interact with technology, we do sometimes we project ourselves in worlds that don't really make much sense. If you're using a cell phone or your smartphone to control your TV, looking at the screen that's, let's say, 15 centimeters tall, when you're at arm's length, and looking at a screen is a different thing. Of course, you've got to focus here, and then you've got to focus there, and so that's what this image shows, and so we do a lot of thinking about that. We provide for the group everything that brings cohesion, or coherence rather, when it comes to user experience, UI, and we do all the you know, the products and the services for the group. It's not a simple task. We work with a lot of external folks, a lot of experts, and again, in many different countries. We work on services as well. We work on services that we develop and that are fairly unique. For instance, this is Orange Money. Orange Money is what? It's the ability for people who are outside of a banking system in emerging countries, for instance, to bank and to wire money with very simple devices, you know, such as you know, USSD. And this is something that we find in most of our African and Middle East countries today. The interesting thing, for instance, with that, and it's just an anecdote almost, is that what we developed for an emerging environment where there was a need for this kind of solution is something that we are now bringing back to France and bring back to Spain. Because, you know, clearly, you know, from a services point of view and from a benefit to the user's point of view, it makes sense in our markets as well. We also work on products, actually more products than I thought I would. I've been with the company for a little less than 1.5 years. This is one thing. This is something that we released on the French market in February of this year. It's called Le Bloc, the block. It's fairly small. It's about 15 centimeter by 15 by 15. It's got incredibly good sound. It's a portable projector that is connected to our complete ecosystem. Set-top box, Wi-Fi access, and of course you can plug in all sorts of things, SD cards, and it's also NFC, USB, and all that. If anybody is interested in having a bit more information on that, I've got videos and all sorts of things I can use later on. So the one thing that I wanted to focus on today on the topic is what is it that design can do within a company to bring the level of design and to actually bring value through design within the company. And sometimes we bang our heads on the wall, okay? As in my short fake bio said, you know, a lot of things have been ruined by management. And we can, you know, we can complain about it, we can cry about it, but you know, we could also be a little bit more positive. So I've got 5 recipes, and by no means am I saying that these are the only recipes. These are things that I've tried, and I'll show you a few clips that illustrate what I mean. The first one is be very clear about what design is. And there's a bit of a political statement here. When I joined the first corporate company in France, they were really trying to move design up. And they said, okay, give us a definition of design. And I could have used something, I love the you know, form follows emotion from Ahmut and from Frog Design, but we all know form follows function. And we, you know, we sometimes have those esoteric sort of ways of presenting ourselves. And what I said is that, no, design is this. And design, there's a time continuum in this. It's observation first. And this goes back to some of the things that Dan just said a few minutes ago. You cannot do good design if you don't observe. But what it means is that you've got to force the company to go and observe and make sure that it is understood by everybody that it brings value. The second thing is strategy. Out of this observation, you create a strategy, you create the plan, you create the vision for the company. And what this says for me is that design is part of that. And then the third thing is the thing that we know all, is the act of giving form. Giving form in all the sense of the term, whether it's digital, whether it's physical, whether it's a service. The second thing is that design has to be embedded. This is a little thing that's still on the website from my previous company. Sorry, it's partly in French, partly in English. What it means is that, yeah, design is the thing that brings, we have a problem or an intention, and we go up to a solution. The design is a continuum. But it works in tandem with, everything that is doing the development of the solution and everything that is the marketing. The third one is we have to own what I call the coherence. I do believe that design can and has to be the defining element that will then develop and ensure that we have a coherence at all the touch points of a brand. And this is something that may sound simple or clear, but when you're in a company of 170,000 people, it's easier said than done. And what it means is that we've got to make sure that we've got the mandate and take that, that mandate to make sure that we touch not only the design aspect of the service of the products that we develop, but what it means when we talk about it at the corporate level, what it means when we're on a website configuring, the solution and things like that. The fourth one is we've got to make sure and be a little bit more professional sometimes. Us designers, and I'm talking about designers that are working from within a company, and sometimes we're a little bit too comfortable for our good. But make sure that we explain why it makes good sense, to use design and to leverage design. And there are 3 clips here that explain that a little bit. Some are in English, some are in French.
Orange delivers products and services to every kind of customer.
Over this, so you'll see in a minute. We're talking about design clinics. For instance, we've forced all the project managers to go through something that is called a design clinic. There's only 50 of us for over 15,000 people who are involved in product development. And so they come through a design clinic, and through the design clinic we make sure that they are complying. Complying is a bit heavy of a word, but that they're again coherent. So that's one of them. We do a lot of little things like that explain. I'll go through this one and I'll skip the next one because we're really short on time. Don't know if we can have the sound here. Oh no, there's just a bit of sound. There's no voiceover here. Okay, we had to design a whole new television interface for our set-top boxes for the French market. And so when we do a little clip like this, it's just to strut our stuff and say that we've done great things, but there's always a message where we explain why we're saving time, why using a modular design approach brings us saving in terms of product time development, for instance, or why by doing something more coherent or doing a remote control that is simpler, we will and which will at the end cost less than the one that we buy off the shelf, that we bring good value to the business. And good design is obviously good value to the business. So this is Orange Modular Design. I'll go through this one very, very quickly.
Alors, les enjeux de l'initiative Orange Modular Design sont au nombre de 3.
Simple words, straightforward things.
Améliorer aussi la cohérence.
In this particular case, we have a repository of modules that we have that are approved and that can be reused and that can be systematically reused. Okay, you're going to say, well, this is something that every design, in-house design firm, design structure does. Well, yes, but what we're doing here is that we're explaining to our CEO, we're explaining to our decision makers that we're saving time by doing that. By saving time, we're actually bringing, more revenue to the company. The last thing is this.
User-centric innovation approach. It's a shared
train
design
people.
Methodology.
In this particular case, sometimes you can beat people. You've got to make sure that they join you. We are this year alone training 400 people, both in France and in the UK, marketing folks, on a 2-day course around user-centric innovation. So we're making sure that they understand the process, we're making sure that they follow the process, and we're making sure that everybody is understanding why the process has good value. Can maybe bring the sound back up, please?
And a common understanding of the customer at each stage, the development at key stages of storyboards and mock-ups to facilitate sharing within the team and with end users, and finally, a focus on understanding the user experience before building the solution. The UCI framework is built on 4 major phases: discover, define, develop, and deliver, with opening phases
fairly standard. But what is interesting at the end of this clip is that we take an example that speaks to everybody, which is Vélib in France. For those of you who've been in Paris, installed with JC Deco, which lets you rent bikes everywhere in Paris, and explain why this is a good UCI example. And then, this is actually the 6th one. It's make sure that design is always visible and understandable at every level, both inside and outside the company. At corporate level, this is from my previous company. If you go to the to the corporate page, there's something about design. There's a clip about design. There's something that explains why it makes sense to use design, why we're in a sense design-driven. I just want to finish with one thing, and maybe this is for a talk later on. A while ago, we were doing a design competition with a few design schools, and I was working with one of them was Cape Town, and the other one was Northumbria. And the marketing person who was accompanying me from Orange, France, was asking one of the design teachers, who in your mind is today really the most interesting designer? And the answer was really interesting. It was Jamie Oliver. It was not, Jonathan Ives or somebody like that. It was Jamie Oliver. Why Jamie Oliver? Well, because Jamie Oliver, like other people, is really looking at changing the way we do things and changing society. I put the other picture on the other side because this is something that has been, very dear to me for as long as I've been a designer. I said earlier that I was going to talk about an experience that some work that I did with an NGO called Design Cooperation in Zimbabwe. I won't have the time, and I realized that this was maybe a little bit too ambitious, and I apologize for that, and I'm feeling sorry for myself. But just want to finish maybe on this. We're talking about prosperity, and this was yesterday as I was thinking about tying this to to prosperity. If you go. Of course, there could have been other adjectives that I could have put up there. There are many different ways of understanding what prosperity means. The interesting thing is that a while ago, the Rocky Mountain Institute, for instance, really made this, took this position on prosperity. I'll let you read it. And I just want to potentially just finish on this and ask that we, as that as designers, we all think about that and see whether this makes sense or not. And so I'll just finish on this slide, since I guess I'm done. Now I've got 30 seconds left. 32. Wow. Well, let me just whip through the images then, and I'll just go over time a little bit. From 1991 to 2000, when I was a young designer, I had to do a military service, which I didn't want to do. So I ended up, a very long story, which I'll make short, I ended up creating an NGO, which I got financed by a whole bunch of people, some of them being IKEA. And I didn't go to Zimbabwe I went to Harare, which which is an English way of pronouncing Harare, the one that doesn't sleep, which is a township, the main township of Harare in Zimbabwe, Old Salisbury. And it looks like this. It's a lot of people who are sometimes called craftsmen. They're not craftsmen, they're small-scale entrepreneurs. And they do crafts because it's a way to generate income. And so they become carpenters without really necessarily understanding what, putting wood together is. It's filthy, it's disorganized, it's a lot, and we'll get to that very quickly, it's a lot of similar products because people, and again, this is so condensed that I want to make sure I'm not passing on the wrong messages because there's no judgment in what I'm saying, and I spent a lot of time there, but there's a difficulty for those small entrepreneurs to take a risk and develop solutions if they don't know whether there's a market or not. And this is where design, for instance, and through design cooperation, we could bring value. And so what I did over the 9 years I spent there was to spend time with the small-scale entrepreneurs and developing solutions with them and getting them to become more creative using a design process. And so we ended up doing all sorts of products, reusing scrap, for instance, making sure that the assembly joints were good. But the important thing the important message that I'm trying to leave you with is that this is also what design can do. Not a designer going over to Zimbabwe or other part of the world and taking his concept or her concepts and notions and references and saying, well, if you copy that, you'll have a good business and you'll make a good profit. It's to make sure that we're developing things that are, yes, contextually right, that makes sense for the local economy, but it also transforms those people into designers. And so we developed all these products. And since we're part of ICSID, also know, and maybe reach out to Brendan or some of us, ICSID has been over the past few decades running those ICSID interior design workshops. Those workshops are, I think, absolutely amazing and a good opportunity to understand some of the more wicked problems that you'll find in emerging economy. These are a few images of one that myself, but also Mugendi, who is here in the room from ICSID, took part in South Africa looking at rural transport. And with that, thank you.